We will stay connected to NATO. Connected to NATO, beginning, middle, and end. We're a transatlantic partnership. That's what I've said.
It seems that the President has answered your problems, but I have to tell you that during this process, I met approximately President many times, but I would say about 50 people from Congress and Senate. And I think the message was quite clear, quite united. And I have no reason to doubt about USA policies in the future.
Let me say one more thing. We learned a hard lesson. Peace and security in Europe is essential to U.S. security and peace. The idea that there could be conflict in Europe among our friends and us not engaged has never happened in modern history. That's why we're staying together.
Next question, President Biden.
Oh, I've called on somebody. I'm sorry. Wall Street Journal. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. President. You've said that Ukraine shouldn't enter NATO until after the war is over. Are you concerned at all that those comments could motivate Putin to keep the war going or discourage him from entering peace negotiations? And is there a serious risk that this war could drag on for years? And do you see any path toward the war ending with Putin still in power?
First of all, no one can join NATO while a war is going on, where a NATO nation is being attacked, because that guarantees that we're in a war, and we're in a third world war. So that it's not about whether or not they should or shouldn't join. It's about when they can join, and they will join NATO. The issue of whether or not this is going to keep Putin from continuing to fight, the answer is Putin's already lost the war. Putin has a real problem. How does he move from here? What does he do? And so the idea that there's going to be what vehicle is used, he could end the war tomorrow. He could just say, I'm out. But what agreement is ultimately reached depends upon Putin and what he decides to do. But there is no possibility of him winning the war in Ukraine. He's already lost that war. Imagine anyway, he's already lost that war.
Just on the question of a concern about going on for years, is there a possibility that there's a stalemate and this becomes...
I'm sorry?
The question of whether the war could go on for years, is there a possibility there's a stalemate and it can continue for quite some time?
Well, I don't think the war can go on for years for two reasons. Number one, I don't think that that Russia could maintain the war forever, number one, in terms of their resources and capacity. Number two, I think that there is going to be a circumstance where eventually President Putin is going to decide it's not in the interest of Russia, economically, politically, or otherwise, to continue this war. But I can't predict exactly how that happens. My hope is, and my expectation is, you'll see that Ukraine makes significant progress on their offensive, and that it generates a negotiated settlement somewhere along the line.
And I have a question for the Finnish president, but I would be remiss if I didn't raise my colleague Evan Gershkovich, who's been in prison for more than 100 days. And I just wondered if you had an update on the process for trying to get him out of prison, and if you're serious about a prisoner exchange.
Oh, I'm serious about prisoner exchange. I'm serious about doing all we can to free Americans who are being illegally held in Russia or anywhere else for that matter. And that process is underway.
Do you envision the possibility of the U.S. having a permanent military base in Finland?
Like I told, we are discussing on DCA, the Defense Cooperation Agreement, and it has a lot of elements. They are still open, but we are open on negotiations, and I know that our counterpart is also very open. So let us see.
Next question goes to President Niinistö, please.
Yes, it's Helsingin Sanomat and Elina Väntönen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And my question is for Mr. President Biden.
Okay.
Or should I just say President Biden? You have repeatedly talked about Finlandization becoming NATOization of Finland. Now, based on
what nation?
You have repeatedly talked about Finlandization becoming NATOization of Finland. Based on your long experience, how does that change Finland's place in the world?
Well, first of all, the context in which I said that was the gentleman who occupies a seat on the other side of your border in Moscow said I said he wanted the Finlandization of NATO. I said it was more likely he's going to get the NATOization of Finland. That's the context in which that was said. And what was the second part of your question?
I asked, how has Finland's position in the world changed during this NATO membership process?
Finland's already a strong, vibrant nation. I think what Finland's joining NATO does, and Sweden as well, when the Nordic countries are all members of NATO, it just makes the world safer. It significantly increases the prospect that there is less likely to be war. We're deadly earnest about the notion. We'll defend every single inch of NATO territory. And now we're on the way of getting to 32 NATO nations. That's a significant commitment. And so the likelihood of any nation voluntarily deciding they're going to attack one of the nations or Finland is highly unlikely. And so, but if it were to, they understand they're not just attacking Finland, they're attacking 31 other countries.
Next question, President Biden, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess it's Arlette, CNN.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. We've seen more disarray with Russian generals, most recently with the firing of a general who criticized the defense ministry, this following that rebellion by Prigozhin. Does this raise any new concerns about Putin potentially doing more drastic things regarding Ukraine, like nuclear weapons, or potentially against the U.S., like election interference?
Well, first of all, they're already interfered in American elections, so that would not be anything new. They did that last time they tried to. But with regard to, I don't think there's any real prospect, you never know, but of Putin using nuclear weapons. Not only has the West, but China and the rest of the world has said, don't go there. Don't go there. Number two. Number three, I think that determining what happens to Prigozhin, what happens to Vilnius, what happens when we discuss this in Vilnius is God only knows what he's likely to do. Well, I'm not even sure, we're not even sure where he is and what relationship he has. If I were he, I'd be careful what I ate. I'd be keeping my eye on my menu. But all kidding aside, who knows? I don't know. I don't think any of us know for certain what the future of Prigozhin is in Russia. And so I don't know how to answer that question beyond that.
And if I could also ask you something about happening back home. You're seeing the GOP grappling with tying abortion rights to defense issues, including a block on military promotions by Senator Tuberville. What does this say about U.S. military readiness? And would you be willing to talk with Tuberville to try to work out some solution?
I'd be willing to talk to him if I thought there's any possibility of him changing this ridiculous position he has. He's jeopardizing U.S. security by what he's doing. I expect the Republican Party to stand up, and do something about it. It's in their power to do that. The idea that we don't have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the idea that we have all these promotions that are in abeyance right now, that we don't know what's going to happen, the idea that we're injecting into fundamental foreign policy decisions what in fact as a domestic social debate on social issues is bizarre. I don't ever recall that happening, ever. And it's just totally irresponsible in my view. And I just think that, I mean, I'm confident that the mainstream of the Republican Party no longer does not support what he's doing. But they got to stand up and be counted. That's how it ends.
And for President Niinistö, you've been working on fortifying the fence along the border between Finland and Russia. Is there anything that you're seeing recently that concerns you? And also, as a leader who shares a border with Russia, what more do you want to see done to deter Putin?
During the beginning of our application process, surely we had to make sure first trying to figure out every possible negative action we might meet, and surely how we respond on that. And we were very careful on that work. So at the moment, the situation is quite calm. Hope it remains as such. But I just want to tell you that Finnish people do feel more secure at the moment. We have 80% of population supporting NATO membership, and more than 80% who say that we will also protect our allies. That's the Finnish position.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference.
Thank you very much.
You have your poll? Yes, we're going to get another.
Tämä